Gregnar looked out of the bridge of the shuttle she had just used, simply amazed at what she was seeing. Many artificial arms simply moved around in preparation for picking up the ship and maneuvering it into position so it could be serviced. She went to stand up and immediately got yoinked down into her seat. Larry chuckled and reached down to the release so that her restraints would be released. Then she stood up. Larry confidently walked towards the door, hit the hatch, and it slowly opened up. Without any hesitation, he began walking down even before the hatch fully extended. And as he walked down, Gregnar was only a few paces behind. As he got to the base and started working towards the doorway, the door opened up and a strange being walked through. Gregnar froze for a moment as she saw a metal human walking towards them. Or wait, was this a human in armor? Or was this... what was this? It simply walked up and immediately brought its hands straight up to the side of its face, extending its fingers all the way, and said, "Welcome back, Captain." Larry responded, "How's it going, Chief?" "Relax." Then he reached out and shook his hand. Gregnar was confused, and the machine simply looked, "Is this the wife?" "Yep." The machine simply turned over and extended its hands. "Welcome aboard, ma'am." Gregnar was confused. Who are you? Not who, what? What? Yes, exactly. No, I mean, what? Aren't you human? No, no, ma'am. I am absolutely not human. I am an artificial construct, the executive officer of this ship. Oh, well then, who's the captain? He is. He simply motioned over towards Larry. Larry tried not to laugh at the whole interaction, but he was getting a bit of a kick out of it. "Everything good to go here, Chief?" "Yes, sir. We're ready to go." "Good. Tell Aya I want to have everything ready to rock and roll as soon as possible." "Everything's already ready, sir." "Good. Now let's get to the bridge. But first, before we take off, I want to show my wife here everything around, so she's not completely confused." Ragnar was completely flabbergasted at this. The humans had not only just recently made it to the stars, but now they had massive ships that were cloaked in a stealth field. How would they come up with this technology, let alone build it? She was completely put back. As they walked over towards the door, suddenly a small, little blue light began to emanate. A small female voice. "Welcome back, sir. Everything is ready for you." "Thank you, Aya. We're going to be making our way around. At first, I want to show Gregnar everything around." Yes. I have already input her as the spouse. You can put her as sub-commander as well." "Confirmed. She is now sub-commander. Anything else, sir?" "Nothing until I get to the bridge. I'll meet you and the chief on there in a few minutes." "Good, sir." With that, the blue light seemed to dissipate. There was no holograph or anything like that. It was just a blue light to just let them know that they were about to speak to Larry. Larry started walking through as Gregnar began to ask, "How? What? How? Just how?" "So no why, when, or where?" Larry asked. "Well, yes, those two, but I mean, look at this. This is gigantic. This is as big as one of our own battleships." "Really?" Larry asked. "If this is the size of one of your battleships, you guys are royally screwed." "What? Why would they be mated?" Sorry, translator again. "Anyways, let me just show you around and I'll explain." As they walked down the hall, Larry began to talk. "You see, after we were able to get actually energy free, as far as 0 point generators were finally available, technology boomed so fast you wouldn't believe it. And it was just absolutely insane. Along with that came the ability to make androids like the chief there. The chief himself is actually on a system to constantly upgrade himself whenever technology becomes available. He's not always going to look that way. He has his own quarters so that he can operate and get himself fixed up no matter what. Along with that, Aya controls the ship. She is the ship. She is also any shuttles or fighters that might come out. She can split herself and rejoin herself whenever. She always has all the different parts to her, and that really helps us out considering we're so short on manpower. By this point, they got to the engines, and he began showing her the several hundred different zero-point modules specifically designed to interconnect with each other. Yep, they each feed into each other, they are all backing up to each other, and you only need half of these to even run the ship at full capacity. Then why so many? It's always good to have a backup. But I count to, and she started counting left and right. I'll save you the trouble. There's 240 of them. 200? Greknar's ears were completely poked up, but her tail was completely spiked into the air, a sure sign that she was like, "What the hell?" With that, Larry continued his tour as he went over to check out the different weapons compartments. These were not of serious note, and he insisted that they were not the massive size that you would expect on a battleship, though Gretnar was still amazed at the sheer number of them. "What's the capacity? How many can these things fire?" Larry pointed over. "You see those rods over there? The ones that are about the size of me?" "Yes." "Until those run out, this cannon can fire every 5.5 seconds. The only reason that long is to actually feed the weapon system. Now, it does need some cooling down a little bit, which is why it has this very extravagant cooling system, along with the energy weapons like this cannon over here," as he taps his hand on the side. "That's an energy weapon?" "Yeah. What, too big for you?" "No, not it's so small." "Oh, yeah, that's what guys want to hear," Larry said as he went away, leaving Greknar a little confused about that. Eventually, they ended up on the bridge, and Greknar started to ask, "What? You're planning on taking this into the war? But it may be armed like a battleship, but I didn't see a lot of armor. There's no crew." "Yeah, that's the problem. We don't have a lot of crew." "Aya." "Yes, sir." "Plot us a course. I'm sure you already know where we're going." "Yes, sir, absolutely." "Chief, is everything ready?" "Affirmative, sir." "Good. Everyone strap in. We're about to jump." With that, Larry immediately just about shoved Kreknar into a seat and started strapping her down. "But I have more questions." "Once we get going, you're going to want to be seated for this." "Why?" "You'll see." Once he had her strapped in, Larry went to his command console, and instead of strapping himself in, he stood there, but other straps came up from the ceiling and from the floor. He immediately latched himself in, and then a whole bunch of holographic displays started to come up in every single side. Along with that, a strange cable dropped down from the ceiling. With that, Larry immediately took it, opened up the Velcro piece, wrapped it around his head, placed the larger metallic piece against the back of his skull, and then goes, "Ah, shoot, I forgot. Uh, Chief, can I get a quick haircut?" "Affirmative, sir." The robot simply got up out of its chair, walked over, pulled out a small blade that it was holding, held Larry's head straight, and then proceeded to, within a few seconds, shave a small patch clean on the very back near the base of his skull. "Done, sir." "Thanks, Chief. Have a seat. This ain't going to take long." He then proceeded to place the small black box with a little bit of electrodes towards the back of his head and then cinch it down around his head. With that, he then closed his eyes and then stood there for a moment. "All right, looks like everything's good to go. Aya, give us a countdown." 4, 3, 2, 1. With that, the ship began to shake and lurch a little bit as it began to turn, and once it was lined up exactly perfect on where it needed to go, it seemed like the world around them changed. It was as though they were in their own pocket dimension as they began to move. And then Larry simply opened his eyes, reached over and pulled the piece off the back of his head, and then turned back to Gregnar and said, "Okay, it's safe now, at least until we decelerate." Gregnar was completely confused. "What the hell was that?" "Oh, this is just our FTL travel." "But with all this, I figured it would be almost be instant." "Oh, no, no, absolutely not," Larry said. "No way. You can't quantum entangle physical properties. Are you insane? By the time we came out, we wouldn't even be resembled as a ship or us anymore. It'd be a strange amalgamation of, well, shit. Because it would just be a lumbering mass of who knows what on the other end." But in our physics class, they say a lot of things in your physics class. But they forget one thing. Once you get down to the quantum realm, yeah, physics is more of a suggestion. Oh, um, uh, well, let's not worry about that. We've got, from what I can see, we got about 10 hours before we get there. So, lunch? With that, Gregnar was unbuckled, and they walked over to the galley so they could get something to eat. As they sat down, Gregnar realized that the rations on the ship weren't exactly the greatest he'd had. Most of them had been preserved for this specific reason, but she did notice that all the foodstuffs were highly packed, highly nutritious. She didn't need much to get full, yet there was just massive amounts of it. Why so much? Oh, well, how do I put this? We have certain phrases for this, survivalist, prepper, and all this other fun shit. But in regardless, what it comes down to is this is home. And if I get stranded out here waiting for somebody to rescue me, I'd rather not be eating barely anything for months on end waiting for somebody to come save my ass. Oh, so that's just in case? Sort of. I planned afterwards, once we finished up everything at the academy, probably do some transport, do some sightseeing around the universe. Sightseeing? Yeah, I wasn't really planning on going back to Earth. Why? Things got a little messed up, and folks like me, we kind of burned ourselves out. Well, what do you mean? What happened? Okay, well, sit down, relax. This is gonna take a while. So, oh, while I do this, one sec. Aya, you listening? Yes, sir. Can you give a holographic display? Just listen to what I'm saying. You can put up the historical events in front of Gregnar as we keep going. Affirmative, sir. And with that, several different displays popped up. This way, Gregnar could see what was going on. You see, once we actually got to the point of energy independence where we were finally, and I mean finally, able to get free from certain people who had a death grip on our entire planet. They did this through financial means, holding on to certain resources and making sure it was only sold for certain denominations to certain people at certain times. Plus, they got a hold of the actual electric circuit. It was a mess. These people thought they owned the entire planet. And once zero point energy came out, you know, quantum energy, it became quite easy. I mean, come on, you saw how many generators I got back there, and this is a small ship. That's not a lot. You should see some of our battleships. They got generators for a quarter of a mile. Really that far? Well, I'm being a little facetious. Oh, okay. I didn't know you were trying to be funny. Well, I'm not being that funny. Regardless, what it came down to was these super rich tried to make it impossible for anybody to actually build their own generators. They tried like anything to make sure it was illegal to have one, to buy one, to sell one, to trade one, to create one on your own. They tried to make it absolutely impossible, but they forgot at that point in time we were in the information age. And because of that, we were able to find all the diagrams we needed. We were also able to get our own little metal fabricators, which were just barely coming out. And we're able to make our own parts. If not, we could just cast them or cut them free ourselves. With this, we were able to make our own small generators. Now, of course, the governments didn't like this because they wanted control too, and it's something about a lot of people just want control over everyone else. And not a lot of people just want to be left the hell alone like I do and a few others. Seriously, Vince is a perfect example of this. After everything he and I went through, he jumped at the chance to get away from Earth and away from all the bullshit that was happening. So you have a lot of bovines defecating? You know this human phrase, don't BS me. Gretnar just seemed to grin a little bit and giggle at her own little joke. Well, to keep going, Larry continued with, you see, you have to understand that the super rich didn't want to give up. The governments didn't want to give up. They passed a bunch of laws, and then there was people saying they're going to come into your house and destroy your generators. You had to be hooked up to the grid, yada, 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 yada. And it got so bad that a lot of people actually said, to hell with you, and just said the government itself can fall apart for all we care. And some of these governments that relied on their own trade of energy, in particular that in fossil fuels. Fossil fuels? Are you kidding me? Gregnar jumped in. Even my people got away from that within a few decades of starting to use it. I know, I've read some of your history, and you guys were clearly advanced on that. However, not advanced enough. You guys went into stagnation pretty soon after that. Gregnar kind of lowered her ears as she realized this was true. Well, what happened with the super rich is they tried to expend a whole bunch of money trying to make it impossible, and once they realized they couldn't, they tried to capitalize on it by trying to tax everybody constantly, saying, oh, these devices, even though they emit no radiation, they emit no carbon, they emit no anything. It is actually just the simplest of free energy sources you can possibly get. They said it was illegal. And we were just like, oh, hell no. And again, a lot of countries just tore themselves to pieces on this one. Now, don't get me wrong, there are a lot of countries that pulled themselves up. But some of them at that point were spiraling so far down, it was terrible. It was absolutely horrible. Aya, you might want to block some of the more gruesome images on that one, because genocide's a real bitch. Genocide? Yeah, we humans are really good at killing each other. Like, really, really, really good. It got so bad that these super rich decided to manufacture a whole bunch of viruses and then started to say, well, the viruses might stop, hint, hint, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, if you start giving up control again. Yeah, okay, I don't think so. They forget that where I'm from, my original country, was born out of a natural fuck you to authority. Huh, that's interesting, Gretnar said. Oh, don't wait, it gets better. After they realized they couldn't bully us through financial means, and a lot of people again just said, screw you, we're doing it ourselves, that is when they started to push the zealots and the cults to start coming after everyone. It was considered as evil as what we were doing. We were going against being a human. Because as soon as we got the 0 point energy, that is when the CRISPR also was released. Now we got a hold of that, and we started being able to develop things with each other. A lot of the people that initially did it did really stupid things. They merged themselves with different animals. Remember those forays I told you about? They wanted to mix themselves with different type of animal DNA, and it was just absolutely crazy. It can be done. I mean, you might have some serious health problems. One of the ladies, she decided to make herself into her own house cat and immediately started scratching her own eyes out because of what she was seeing. I have no idea what she was seeing, but it became a huge deal. Kind of a warning for people not to do that. But my eyes were tampered with. Your eyes were tampered with to make sure you can still see the same way you used to. Yet they changed a whole bunch of other things inside that beautiful body of yours. So understand that and understand it well. But once people started adjusting themselves and realized that they could rejuvenate, regenerate, the zealots, oh, they came out big time. But that was after the big problems happened. What big problems? Well, you see, the energy can only do so much. The CRISPR can only do so much. And during that time, we were so obsessed with our own hubris, our own incessant vanity, that a lot of folks, no matter what they did to their bodies, it just wasn't enough. They would send themselves into deep spirals of depression. And 41% of those that adjusted themselves within the first 5 years self terminated. That's horrible. Yeah, it is. Some people were altered against their will, and that was one that, oh boy. Oh, many people got their ass kicked or worse on that one. Seriously, someone's not ready to do it. You don't force it on them. Ever. That's not something that should ever be done. And with that, of course, even more people got killed. And then you got the conflicts from the zealots that would happen after that. There's another 12% people dying from the conflicts here, going at each other. The zealots believe that if you're immortal, then you're not human anymore. Bullshit. That's not what makes us human. That just makes you able to enjoy things a little better. Me, I like to stick around for a long forever time. Sue me. That's just me. But not everybody can do that. You got to remember also that in human society, especially with females, if you spend the next 20 years, even if you look like you're 18 while you're doing it, but you spend 20, 30, 40 years having a mate after mate after mate after mate with all different mates, then you're looked at as extremely dirty. But I thought you got rid of all your viruses. We did. We killed them all. Well, to a point. What do you mean? Oh, well, for that to work with the CRISPR that made viruses pretty much extinct, I say pretty much because you would have to inoculate every single form of flora and fauna at the exact same time. That can't be done. Okay? If that can be done, okay, somebody tell me how, because I would love to hear it. But it is not something that can be done. Absolutely not. Aya, I appreciate it, but that wasn't the time to butt in. My apologies, sir. You're fine. Okay? Then don't let me stop you from doing your job. Yes, sir. All right, where was I? Zealots and cults? Ah, yes, those, yes. A lot of people simply assign the cults to be the religious ones. No, they weren't. The worst ones were the ones that had no faith at all. Holy crap, they tried to say that those of us that changed ourselves were now a new type of human, and holy crap. I'm like, seriously, you just found out you don't age. You really want to kill yourself that quick or get yourself killed that quick? Next thing you know, there's brush fire wars and major wars going across the planet. So what did we do? We built ships like this. Well, maybe not this one. You remember the one we came up in, that little Corvette? Yeah, that's a Corvette. That's that's kind of small for a Corvette. Well, it's a shuttle actually, but it's classified as a Corvette. In any case, that was the biggest ones we could make at the time because of the resource restrictions. Once we actually got up to the stars, there's so much resources up there, we just started to make bigger ships and bigger ships and bigger ships, and people would have to earn their ships. They would have to pay for them. How did you pay for something like this? This is not even close to the biggest ship. This would be like me getting a medium-sized yacht. I don't understand. Okay, let me explain. This ship here was created to my own specifications, but to get this, I had to do some absolutely crazy shit as far as financially speaking. I'm listening. With this, she had a very intense look in her eyes, as Larry continued. Well, you see, I was retired at the time, so I had a decent amount of money. The thing is, my retirement was supposed to be until I died. But since I don't die anymore, there was a question about retirement. Should we just keep paying these people forever? Universal basic income or something like that? I mean, I did earn it after all, after getting myself almost killed probably a dozen times, suffering from really nasty PTSD. You've slept next to me. So how I can say that it came down to they ended up saying, you worked for 20 years. We will pay you that rate at the 40-year mark. You can either take all the money now or we will pay you for the next 40 and then it will just end. Well, I took that money and after paying off any and all of my debts, I looked into buying this. And he motions towards the beams and everything inside the ship. This ship is the culmination of me basically killing myself for over 20 years. I was able to actually get this, and this is home. Well, this is my home away from home. Oh, what are you talking about? Gregnar asked. Oh, my actual home. I have land back down on Earth. I have my house, I have land, I have the barn, I'm sure the bees are probably still alive, but I mean, I have the land. It's being maintained. I actually have one of my cousins. I pay him $1,000 a year just to go and make sure that the lawn is taken care of and that the toilets get flushed and all that other fun jazz. And pretty soon after that, I went up into space. I ran this baby through her paces a little bit. I got a hold of the chief. I got a hold of Aya, which made things a whole lot easier. And then this opportunity came up. What opportunity? The opportunity to come to the academy. Oh, interesting. Yeah, and it actually pays. I'm actually paid to go to school to learn how to deal with everybody else. Now, if we had known that those of us that were going were going to cause such a big problem, we might have rethunk it. But then again, you never know what the hell's going to happen. That's true, she said. They seemed to pause for a moment, as both of them were deep in thought. And eventually Greknar simply turned and said, do you regret coming to the academy? With that, Clary's eyes softened a lot. My dear, if I hadn't come to the academy, I wouldn't have met you. And I wouldn't have met a woman like you on Earth, I guarantee that. With that, she immediately blushed, and she began to hold his hand ever so tightly. Larry kind of knew what that meant, as Greknar's signals weren't exactly subtle. Not to mention, just watching her ears and her tail was enough to let him know what she was thinking. He was thinking for a moment, though, would have been nice if women on Earth had this giveaway. Maybe dating wouldn't have been such a bitch when I was younger. He didn't say that last part out loud, but that's sure what he was thinking. Pretty soon, it was time. Time to leave the galley and head back up towards the bridge. As they walked, Gregnar still posed a few questions. So, does that mean you're the first generation to be not the same as other humans? Yeah, he said, and I'm grateful for that. Oh, I am so grateful. Seriously, I had so many close calls with death. No thanks. Death, you can stay the other way. I'm good. Right here. With that, Gregnar seemed to laugh as Larry was joking around, making a whole bunch of hand gestures with that. So, what about the other generations that are coming behind you? Oh, well, they'll have to find their own way. I mean, the best we can do is guide them as best we can. But they got to make their own way, and that's just the way it is. I mean, I can't have my nieces and nephews to follow me. They don't have the same, how the hell do I put it? They would need certain experiences to follow the same path as me. But the fact of the matter is, once we actually found the other species, the races on Earth really stopped with all their grudges. I mean, except for the zealots, we still have those. They're limited to their small sectors, still wallowing in the sand, trying to figure out what the hell they want to do. Others trying to spit out a barely any type of existence in some sort of half jungle somewhere, and it's just absolutely crazy. Well, why don't you uplift them? They don't want to be uplifted. But why? Well, you got some hard questions. So let me just. This is the duality of humanity. I told you about duality before. Yeah, and I'm starting to understand it, but why would these folks choose just a simple lifespan like that. I mean, I'm happy that I don't have to worry about that anymore. Well, not now, but in about, looking at his watch, in about 3 hours you will be. Greknar suddenly got a little nervous as she felt a small bit of cold go down her spine at that. Larry realized, and then pulled her close and held her. Don't worry, you'll be safe on this ship. How do I know? I got an awesome crew. With that, they finally got back to the bridge and were standing on there as Greknar still asked a bunch of questions. Well, what was it like anyway, being that old and rejuvenating and regenerating? Oh, here's the fun one, yeah. Well, when it first came out, the 0 point, it didn't take long before people found the frequency to set well, it's not actually a generator, it's a capacitor, but whatever. They found out the way to set the frequency of that energy to go through you, and the regeneration was not actually so bad. You did it usually when you slept. A lot of times you can set things up so that you can regenerate when you slept beforehand, but they were tenuous at best because people a lot of times sold bad products, claiming it was one thing, was actually another, or they only built it halfway, it didn't actually work, and all this other fun stuff. So the regeneration wasn't bad. I mean, that just meant if you pulled a muscle or something, by the time you actually woke up the next morning, you felt great. You were all good. My knees started feeling so much better. My shoulders started to feel so much better. My back was feeling awesome. I wasn't waking up with headaches anymore. It was just great. The only problem is a lot of people would want to basically put themselves into a coma and stay in there so long that when they woke up, they started to atrophy a bit. That's not so fun. You got to be careful with it. Oh, so is that why they had me in the tube so long? Oh no, you went through a totally different one. That was the actual, CRISPR process to change you from what you were into this lovely form. Yeah, come with me. Come with me. With that point, Larry motioned over to Gretnar. She reached out her hand. He just about yoinked her right out of the chair, and he began to pull her down the hallway. Well, yeah. Before things really get kicked off, I just want to take you in here and um, hold on a sec. Pushing the button on the side of the door opened, and he immediately pulled her inside. Come here, you. I'm going to show you what a regenerated body can actually do to your body. An hour and a half later, they came back out. Gregnar was a little disheveled, and Larry had a huge smile on his face. Yet they went back to the galley for another chat and another bit of food. They knew it was going to be about 90 minutes before they finally got to their destination, so they wanted to kill some time. Gregnar surprisingly jumped right back into her conversation. So what was it like to rejuvenate? Oh, that was freaky, I'll tell you. That was really freaky. Freaky? Slightly disturbing, I should say, as Larry reached up and grabbed his drink and his tray. Well, you gotta understand, it's not something anyone can actually prep you for. It was just the fact that suddenly you look in the mirror and you're like, wait a minute, I haven't seen this face in 5 years. The next time you do it, I haven't seen this face in 10 years. The next time you do it, I haven't seen this face in 20 years. Holy shit. And it's weird. And sometimes it's really cool. I mean, it was very common when you went in for a little bit of rejuvenation to, let's just say you didn't want to be in a mix of male and female. Well, why is that? Do you have any idea the amount of women who the first thing they do is grab their chest and go, oh my God, they're not saggy anymore. They feel great. And you're just sitting there because when you do this, you can't wear anything. You're just sitting in that chair while they do what they're going to do. And it's just messed up. Sometimes they just say the weirdest things. And of course, sometimes some people will be so surprised at what they see, they lose track of their bodily functions and then clean up on aisle 3. Gregnar was confused at that last part, but Larry was laughing so much he had to actually put his fork down. He couldn't finish eating. So, rejuvenation didn't hurt? No, it was just weird. In some cases, people actually brought themselves back to the age of teenagers. Why would they do that? Isn't your species' best time when you're, um, yeah, about in the 20s? But the kicker is, remember I said about vanity? Yeah, our species has a really big problem with that. Like seriously big problem with that. It's such a big problem that even now it's one of the reasons I don't like going back to Earth. Just a sheer trying to show everybody off. I mean, those that are happy with themselves, great, but they're constantly trying to show themselves off. And it makes me a little uncomfortable when I know somebody is there. I don't care if she looks like she's 12. If she's older than my grandmother, I'm having a little trouble wrapping my brain around that. But if you are living indefinitely, should that matter? See, this is the problem with being first generation. You're the one who brought this up. Remember? Yes, I remember. So let me just say this. When since I've actually lived the experience of actually growing up, growing older, and now that I don't have to, my part of me will always be in that mindset. It's just there. It will never go away. Ah, I see. I think. Um, actually, no, I'm not sure I can see. Well, that's because you're so young. My dear, remember when I said it was hard for me to actually um, look at you in an intimate manner? Yes, because you're so young and I was so old and you had had no mates before me? Yes, I've lived that experience. You haven't. Oh, I see. Huh, this is a lot to think about. Yeah, exactly. Do you have any idea how many people had to lock themselves into a room, like a hotel room or something, or maybe their own house, just to wrap their brains around the entire deal? Huh, that is just amazing. I wouldn't have ever thought about something like that. Most people don't. But the thing is, if you're someone like me or like Vince, we've spent so much time sitting on guard towers and overwatching other areas with absolutely nothing to occupy our time except our own thoughts. You think about stuff like this, so we're able to wrap our brains around it a little easier. Not that we can wrap around it fully, mind you, but easier. That's why we're not part of the 41%. But I still don't understand why that percentage was so high. Well, let me put it to you this way. You got somebody who's naturally unappealing to look at. You mean ugly? Yeah. You got someone who has always looked that way. If you rejuvenate, there's still just going to be a younger version of that. You regenerate them, there's still going to be the healthiest version of that. And remember what I said about vanity. Vanity will drive people over the edge. They will end up looking to the abyss. The abyss ain't just going to look back, it's going to reach up, grab them, and pull them down. You got to be very, very, very careful on this. I think I'm beginning to understand, Gregnar said. But, should I worry about you? For what reason? I don't understand. Worried about me? Why? Well, I don't want you to, decide that your vanity or anything is getting the best of you. And Larry simply reached out and grabbed her hand and squeezed it. My dear, as long as you're next to me, you don't have anything to worry about. Even if you go home and visit for a few months, I know you're coming back. You don't have to worry about anything. I will be here for you. And you know why? No, why's that? Because I'm human, and human males are different than the alphas on your planet. They're a very, very different way of thinking. Well, I know that, but maybe you could be more specific. All right, let me just put you this way. when it comes down to human males, our job that is hardwired into us, that will never go away, is to protect and provide for those that we care for. That is what we do. That is hardwired in our system, that does not go away. Protect and provide. Which means now that we're married, I will always be there to protect and provide for you. I mean, seriously, do you even have to ask about provision? As he raised his hand to point towards the walls once again. And you've seen the weapons array. And you've seen what I'll do to anybody who even thinks about hurting you. With that, Gretnar once again thought, and then had a simple smirk on her face. And then she gave Larry those eyes. Those eyes that definitely said, okay, clean up on aisle 7. But this time they didn't leave the galley. I mean, after all, they did have the whole ship to themselves. Well, minus the chief and Aya and any other drones that might be in there, but they know how to keep a secret. It was about 10 minutes before they'd have to jump back into normal space. After just a few hours, they went several different sectors, well over a dozen. And now they're getting ready to jump into the edge of forced space. Forced space was a strange collaboration of planets, as they preferred certain planets over others and never did terraform any worlds. They figured if they were supposed to be on that planet would be ready-made for them. Some of them would make do on planets that weren't exactly the greatest, but they still expanded up to the point where they end up next to another species' territories. They respected territory enough to not want to go to war and lose territory with someone. But then again, that's what this war was all about. As Gregnar got into her chair and she strapped herself in, Larry went back to the center console, strapping himself, again standing, not sitting, and then placing the weird device on the back of his head. Before he could close his eyes, Gregnar yelled out, "What is that for anyway?" "Oh, this?" He pointed to it. "Oh, it's a neural link." "A what?" "Yeah, I have a CNI, a cranial neural interface. I'm not completely organic." "What um what you're I don't there's a word for it. I can't think of it. The word you're looking for is cyborg. And I guess you could say, yeah. With this, he simply closed his eyes. The several screens popped up around him. Every once in a while, he would open his eyes and turn towards a certain screen. And eventually, they got ready. He yelled out, "All right, strap in. We're about to go back into normal space. This might be a little bumpy." With that, Gregnar could hear several devices spinning up. These, she learned that they were some sort of inertial dampening system, something to make sure that the ship itself didn't tear itself to pieces or kill everyone inside every time it accelerated or decelerated. And then, as she felt a strange, almost fuzzy feeling on her skin, yet she looked over, she didn't have any body hair. Why does her skin feel that way? But it was only for a moment, as the ship immediately decelerated and entered into forced space. With that, Larry simply raised his arms out and seemed to be moving his fingers around, seemingly activating several things. With that, Gregnar could hear a whole thing's activating. Weapons array activated. Thermal cloak activated. Hypersonics activated. Anti-gravitational wavelengths activated. And the list just continued. At least for a few more minutes. Gregnar looked at her screen and realized that she was, in fact, in her home system, but she wasn't quite next to the fighting. In fact, they were so far out that it would be difficult for even some of their best sensors to pick them up before the ship itself basically disappeared. Eventually, she realized this is how the humans got around so easily. This is how they were able to do things. They were able to be undetected. Even though they didn't seem to have any natural way of doing it, they would find a way to become completely intangible, like a ghost in the darkness.